Thanks everyone, and it's fantastic to see so many people fascinated by land sector stuff. I've worked in it for nearly 25 years now, and I was just talking to someone earlier about how we've always waited and waited knowing that this moment was going to come. And it's been amazing to watch it just come at full force in the last couple of years, and it's an extremely exciting time to be both working in a startup, but also seeing all the investment and the promise to actually address climate change. So I'm going to start by making sure that I can make this work, which is great. But the very first thing is what FlintPro is. FlintPro is a software system for integrating multiple streams of data with the main purpose of being able to reveal nature's value. And by that we mean there's lots of values sitting in the land sector. There's production values, there's economic values, but there's also a lot of natural values that are pretty opaque at the moment. So how do we actually start to understand all of those? And I'm going to go a little bit on carbon this time, but obviously it's much broader than that. So when I was talking about the explosion in interest from everywhere, I think we need to look at what's really changed heavily over the last couple of years. And one of the main things has been the vast increase in not just carbon markets, but also need for general transparency and reporting. I've got a whole lot of logos up here. It's obviously very important to put logos up, but some of the key ones are things like TFND in particular coming very hard at the financial sector. And looking at all the various carbon projects there, voluntary and compliance. So climate change is representing a pile of risks and a pile of opportunities. We all know that. But I'd like to focus on a few because whilst we're always looking at new markets like carbon, we've also got to recognise the need for the land sector and people to maintain access to existing markets. If new standards come in and you're not able to sell your product under those new standards, that's a real problem. So there's real pressure being applied there. There's risk expectations, there's the needs to obviously put in profitability, supporting green claims. Obviously a very big one with the ACCC coming down very hard now. How do you make sure that that's not going to come and impact your organisation while also not backing off taking action from having fear of actually having that come back on you and meeting all of these standards? What I hope you can see here is that this is actually driving everything towards a very systematic approach. We can't, when we're at this point anymore, start relying on things like spreadsheets or just asking a consultant to write a report once a year. We actually need systems inside organisations that complete this reporting, just like the financial sector. The next point I want to make is that there is no silver bullet here. There is no one technology that can actually get you over the line for all of this type of reporting. You can't do it all with satellites and remote sensing. You can't do it all with models. You can't do it all with GIS systems or ground data. But that's fine, because each one of those has incredible strengths. And if you combine those strengths, suddenly you can actually achieve a lot. And you can really start building on those technologies to add more and more. And that's exactly what we do with FLINT Pro. This is exactly how FLINT Pro works. I'm not going to run through this diagram too much, but what we do is we bring in the best available data. We can always bring in better data through time. We then integrate that with a series of models and systems. Very complicated, obviously, lots of back-end stuff, but the end process is really nice, simple results that people can use for their carbon reporting. And that's what we're aiming for. It's a very powerful engine. It's one system, but it has multiple use cases. We've already had multiple use cases for it, from everything from state governments, large oil and gas companies, the agricultural carbon and biodiversity program that some of you may have seen, all of those websites and systems were actually backed in by FLINT Pro, and moving more and more into farm level emissions estimation. This means that the one system is actually able to solve multiple purposes, and it's not just for reporting, it's actually for planning. It allows you to do scenario analysis, testing, thinking about the possible futures that you actually want to have. If you're going to make reductions in emissions and increase sequestration, you have to actually be able to judge what actions to take and why. Some really nice examples of this. This is a program we did for New South Wales. Actually ran carbon stocks from 1945 through to 2070. This is just from 1990 onwards, but shows at a 25 metre resolution across the entire state what's been happening in our forests. And you can see the ups and downs. The great big spike there, 2003, for those that might remember, was a very large fire. This analysis stopped just before the 2020 fires, which will probably be even bigger than that one. But inside that, there's also land clearing, forestry, a whole lot of other activities. It also allows us to start looking at transparency and rapid assessment. So I put this up here because for a bit of fun, a month ago, we grabbed every single carbon project under HIR, and we grabbed all the national systems and we ran it through the system. as the national inventory would see it. So for every single carbon project, plus 50 and 100 kilometre boundaries around that, we now have the results as the national accounts would see. Now, obviously, there's some debate about how the quality of the national data influences these results, but that's even better, because what we can do is actually replace that national data and bring your project level data in and just rerun it. This analysis, a couple of years ago, would have taken weeks. It took us less than an hour to run the entire process. Moving into farm and regional benchmarking and footprinting. So this is not just looking at the on-farm emissions, but the Scope 3 emissions. For those that are aware of Scope 3, the emissions associated with your activities. What's the emissions associated with the fertiliser that you've bought? All of those types of things coming in. And you'll see that those emissions are actually huge. They're a very large component. And farmers and other groups are getting asked more and more to start reporting these emissions, especially through pressures like banks, who are looking at doing their financed emissions. So the system is looking at doing that, but also allowing you to benchmark and compare. Very quickly, soil carbon, very popular. Yet another great example, something where we've actually integrated models with remote sensing and ground data to start producing soil carbon estimates. So not just relying on one technology, but multiple technologies to increase the confidence in that. Looking at risk, adaptation and resilience. I'm not going to go too much into this, but when you think about the land sector, this is where the intersection is. It's not just about mitigation, it's all about how we adapt to changing climate, because that is really going to impact our land sector. Everything is coming together. It's no longer a silo of adaptation and a silo of mitigation. They actually impact right in the middle of this. And this is a great example of looking at the carbon stocks by increases in forest fire danger index days. So if you want to start a reforestation project, you want to start it where it's more likely to burn or less likely to burn. This is the type of information we can spit out. So very quickly, and this is what we're doing, we're focusing on the needs and building to them. There's a whole lot of new policies, you've got to make sure you meet those. You can't just have something simple or you will fail. We're really going to need these spatial systems. If we're not working spatially and we're not working through time, then we're not going to get there. That is core information to making key decisions. But most importantly is this problem that everyone said, oh, it's all too hard. Well, it's not. Full land sector accounting is completely within reach, as long as you use a systematic platform-style approach to do it, and that's exactly what FLINT Pro does. So thank you very much. Happy to take questions later.